Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of Convoco, welcome to the 2018 Convoco Forum. The topic this year is the multiple futures of capitalism. We intentionally chose the term capitalism. It has an ideological association, and when you hear the term, it invites opposition. If the term capitalism is too ideological as a battle cry, then of course you can replace it by the neutral term market economy. According to its conventional definition, capitalism means radically subjecting yourselves to the laws of the market. This goes back to the idea of the political economist and philosopher Adam Smith. His book, The Wealth of Nations, is the basis of today's system. Adam Smith was the first economist who focused on markets. These were the center of our economies. Markets, according to Adam Smith, cannot be detached from society as mathematical constructs, which is the way it seems today. Instead, they are living institutions which are bedded in our cultures by standards and trust. And these are constantly changing as a result of exchange, so they are products of our civilization. According to Adam Smith, constant exchange is what unites the ideas behind all human interactions. Beginning with communication, and then economic exchange, and all the way to exchange, which both are based upon. It's an exchange of values and respect. If you're aware of this, then the call for submitting yourself to the laws of the market will get a totally different connotation. We are not subjecting ourselves to any foreign power. We're subjecting ourselves to our own values and rules. We're just leaving it up to the market to regulate the rules of the game. But capitalism is more than the market. Capitalism universalizes the meaning of capital. The term capital is derived from the Latin capitalis, which relates to the head or to life. This, in turn, goes back to caput, which means head or the main point. And here we see that, economically speaking, capital is what is essential as opposed to the interest or income that it yields. Its momentum comes from the accumulation of capital. Only when capital is accumulated did something new occur in history, economic growth. And this momentum was seen very clearly during the Industrial Revolution. With low wages and monopolization, we saw more and more economic growth during this period. When agriculture dominated our economic lives, this was not present. It did not exist. An important factor with the development of capitalism was and is globalization. Globalization has always changed our market. Today, it is often seen as a threat. And as a reaction, we see more and more geopolitical and economic nationalism and protectionism. More and more G20 states are closing themselves off with national trade barriers and bilateral agreements. Unfortunately, we can also see first economic indications moving towards deglobalization. Deglobalization raises concerns for two reasons. First of all, because it restricts our freedom. And those of us who live in the UK are experiencing this now with Brexit. And secondly, because it undermines the rules which preserve our civilization by controlling interactions between individuals and states. Globalization depends on cross-national regulation systems and also by the fact that we have to accept the legal proceedings from other countries. Let's think briefly about globalization. The term globalization describes cross-border movements, movements of people, ideas, technologies, and cultures. The term was used for the first time in the 1970s in order to describe the internationalization of markets, in particular the financial markets. So globalization is a relatively new idea, but it is a much older reality. The philosopher Peter Sloterdijk divides globalization into three phases: the cosmic uranical globalization. Back in antiquity, the globe as the model for our Earth was considered by the educated people. Terrestrial globalization between 1492 and 1945. This was globalization of discoveries. It began with Christopher Columbus in his second excursion in 1492 when he discovered America. This was Christian seafaring and asserted itself politically through colonialism in Europe. Why do we take 1945 as the year for the end of terrestrial globalization? In 1944, the gold-based world monetary system was established in Bretton Woods. The countries for which it applied were the United States, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, and Japan. And that is when we have the beginning of the third globalization, electronic globalization, which we're talking about today. And this is what we'll be talking about at today's Convoco Forum, the shaping of our capitalistic system. What is typical for the third electronic globalization, that is to say today's phenomenon, is the fact that it covers the entire world. The world is deterritorialized. It replaces the round Earth by a network of points of intersection and lines which result from the links between computers. The world is going virtual, and this offers us the opportunity to transition to universalization as a uniform system of values. Digital networking of our world puts an end to the borders between markets, regions, companies, machines, and people. All of a sudden, we have global business which is independent of any locations. Digital platforms, the exponential increase in data connectivity, and Industry 4.0 technologies are opening up new business models and markets. And this then also has an impact on operations outside of the economy. In history, technological innovations, which we refer to as breakthrough technologies, have always given our economy a surge in growth, and they have also changed our society because they have an impact on our values. Let's think, for example, of the invention of the steam engine or electricity. You can see how the lighting in our cities and how this has led to enlightenment, according to the English term enlightenment. Today, too, we are at such a time of economic and social changes. We have to try to recognize and understand what effects electronics and technology have on how we think and on our values. One thing is for sure: globalization is not a new phenomenon. From the very beginning, capitalism was characterized by the terms globe and speculation. The economic system in the colonial area went beyond local markets and countries. With seafaring, we saw the beginning of the race for opportunities in distant markets. Let me quote Peter Sloterdijk. Even the term discovery was a phenomenon of investment. In other words, this is an example of taking risks. You have a type of person who wants to create his own happiness and future by playing with opportunities and does not want to simply take them as God-given. A type of entrepreneur was born. The sociologist Werner Zombat called them founders. This is a type of individual who has learned in the new economy of ownership and money that it makes good sense to incur debts. These entrepreneurs give the idea of having debts its modern significance. This means without looking at debts as something positive, we would not have capitalism. In 2018, electronic globalization is in full swing. With technological progress, people are connected throughout the whole globe at the same time. Communication has no limits. More than 3.6 billion people, nearly half of the world's population, have an internet connection and can be connected. Think of Facebook. We have 2 billion people. Instagram, we have 1 billion users, and Twitter with 236 million users. Our world's economy is multipolar. It's not only just a few countries, starting with the USA, the Western Europe, Japan, but there are many countries who contribute to global growth. And that's good news when you think of equality and justice. What effect does electronic globalization have? You can see the book called Factfulness that came out this year. Hans Rosling, a medical doctor, and we should get a picture of this in just a minute. This breaks down the world population into 4 groups according to their income. He uses the figures from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund as a basis for his different groups. Level 1, we have 1 billion people. Their income is up to $2 per day. Level 2, here we have 3 billion people who have an income of up to $8 per day. Level 3, here we have 2 billion people whose income is up to $32 per day. And at level 4, ladies and gentlemen, you belong to this group. You have people with more than $32 per day. Most of the world's economy is experiencing an increase in income on a continuous basis. Between today and 2040, the number of people living at level 3 will go from 2 to 4 billion people. So nearly everyone all over the world will become a consumer. Provided the forecasts from the United Nations with regard to population growth are correct, and that Africa and Asia continue to grow as they are now, then in 2040, 60% of the consumers in level 4 will not live in the Western world. Ladies and gentlemen, that means, in other words, the West will no longer dominate the world's economy. Is that good? Some of you might ask. Yes, it is good, because capitalism will only function if we have enough successful people who can be consumers. And what I mean by this is that they can transform economic offerings into ways of life. That will make inhabitants citizens. Today, we are far from being just, in other words, good, but we are on the way to making up for inequalities and for improving conditions of life. Adam Smith, in his book, The Wealth of Nations, realized that opening up markets for everyone involved will bring more prosperity. This is confirmed by developments in China. When China entered the market economy, and also the economic opening of Eastern Europe brought globalization in the early 19s, and this gave globalization a great boost. This is supported by new technologies, and this has led to a strong economic growth. Since the early 1980s, the per capita income in highly developed economies has almost increased twofold. In the emerging countries, it has increased nearly threefold. The number of people living in absolute poverty has dropped since the early 1990s. At the same time, in addition to this positive overall picture, we can see that there is a new unequal distribution of assets and income. So the question is this a principle of modern capitalism, which means that inequality is growing within different countries? The goal of our society must be to channel gains in prosperity in such a way that we have more prosperity for everyone. The markets need to serve people and the common good, the bonum commune. Last year at Convoco, we talked about the common good, bonum commune. That was our discussion last year. The common good is well-being in general in a society. It's essential for the cohesion of our society, also for the global society, because focusing on common good will bring different parts of society closer together. This will connect the world globally. That's what we're talking about here. And that's why Convoco is addressing this topic today, the multiple futures of capitalism. The English title, The Multiple Futures of Capitalism, describes this perhaps even better than the German title. Considering the technological and social developments, we see that there are multiple futures of our economic system which could be conceivable. That's why I'm especially pleased that Professor Justine Yifu Lin from the Beijing University will be giving us our keynote address. He was born in Taiwan, and he was the first chief economist at the World Bank from the Global South. His book, The Quest for Prosperity, deals with the question how you can elevate a nation from economic poverty. In China, we're observing a new form of capitalism. It is characterized by dirigism and the control of the state over the economy. China has come up with a mixed form between market economy and planned economy. One of China's strengths is its long meritocracy and its educational tradition. China leads the World League with 4.7 million MINT graduates, mathematics, IT, natural sciences, and technology, MINT. China invests 2% of its GDP every year in research and development. The total number of patents in China was 1.2 million in 2016. America is number 2 at 295,000 patents, which means that almost 1 million fewer patent applications. The Chinese have achieved breakthroughs in many key technologies. They developed the largest radio telescope worldwide, as well as the first quantum satellite. Beijing has become one of the leading global science centers. Shenzhen is referred to as the Silicon Valley for hardware. So now the big question is, will this continue? And what does this mean for the world? There have been critics, such as the winner of the Nobel Prize in Economics, Ronald Coase, who said that the lack of free markets is counterproductive for the development of ideas and a further increase in innovation. But the large number of innovations in China, however, does not confirm this. So that brings us to the basic question: does capitalism require democracy? The future of capitalism, a vision. Where do we want this journey to take us? That's what we'll be talking about today and this year at Convoco. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. The pioneer in the Silicon Valley, Alan Kay, said that. Jeff Bezos quoted him in one of his first job vacancies. The sociologist Jens Beckett mentions this in his book, The Imagined Futures. He talks about how important fictional expectations are for the momentum of capitalism. Is capitalism a world of appearance where you live for expectations more than living for what is going to come in the future than for what is already here now? Since the beginning of the 20th century, economies use they use the economy to explain current decisions. In economics, everything revolves around the future. So now I'm especially pleased to hand over to Professor Justin Yifo Lin. A very warm welcome to you, Professor Lin.